The wind moves through the olive groves of Syria, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant salt. Here, in the quiet before the storm of history, the silence is heavy with the weight of choices made long ago. I sit by the fire, watching the embers glow and fade, much like the hopes of a republic that once seemed eternal. The night is cool, and the stars above are indifferent to the struggles of men below. There is a stillness now, a profound calm that settles over the soul when the noise of the forum and the clash of steel have finally ceased. I remember the taste of dust on my lips from the march, the cold steel of the gladius, and the warmth of a brother's hand. The shadows lengthen, stretching across the ground like the long reach of memory. It is in this quietude that the truth of my life becomes clear, stripped of the anger and the ambition that once drove me. The fire crackles softly, a rhythmic sound that mirrors the beating of a heart that has seen too much and yet remains steady. The world turns, the seasons change, but the essence of the man remains, etched in the stone of history, waiting for the light of understanding to reveal its true form. The air in the library holds the faint smell of dried papyrus, cedar oil, and the salt of the nearby Mediterranean Sea. Dust motes dance slowly in the beams that filter through the high, arched windows of the stone structure. Parchment scrolls lie unrolled on wooden desks, their edges worn by the gentle touch of countless scholars over many years. A single oil lamp sits unlit upon a marble table, waiting for the coming twilight to illuminate the texts within. Outside, the gentle lapping of waves against the harbor walls provides a rhythmic and soothing backdrop to the silence inside. The room feels timeless, suspended in a moment of peaceful contemplation, away from the chaos of the political world. Shadows lengthen slowly across the mosaic floor as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon. The stillness of the space invites deep thought and a calm acceptance of the passage of time. A specific bronze statue from the late Roman period depicts a figure holding a scroll with a solemn expression. The metal has oxidized to a deep green patina that covers the intricate folds of the toga. Soft light falls across the carved face, highlighting the deep lines around the eyes and the firm set of the jaw. The statue stands in a quiet courtyard where the sound of water trickles from a small fountain nearby. Dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight that pierce the high windows of the stone hall. The air smells faintly of old parchment and dried lavender placed in a clay pot on the pedestal. This object serves as a silent witness to the passage of time and the endurance of memory. My actions remained a subject of debate among historians and philosophers for centuries to come. The political environment of the time was characterized by deep divisions and a loss of faith in the Senate's ability to govern. I represented a faction that believed violence was sometimes necessary to preserve liberty. My military background and political acumen made me a formidable opponent to the Caesarian faction. The events of 44 BC set in motion a chain of conflicts that would reshape the Roman world forever. The assassination did not restore the Republic, but instead accelerated its transformation into an empire. I died believing I had acted for the good of Rome, even as the state moved toward autocracy. The story remains a testament to the complexities of political power and the high cost of ideological conviction. The legacy of the Republic lived on in the laws and traditions that survived the fall of the state. Future generations would look back on this period with a mixture of admiration and sorrow for what was lost. The quiet study remained unchanged as the night deepened and the oil in the lamp burned low. The shadows grew longer, merging with the darkness that filled the corners of the room. The scent of lavender seemed to fade slightly, replaced by the cool air of the approaching dawn. The scrolls on the desk waited patiently for the return of the scholar who would read them again. The bronze inkwell reflected the faint light of the moon through the small window. This scene of stillness offered a moment of peace amidst the chaos of historical events. The room held the memory of thoughts written and unwritten, of decisions made and undone. It was a place where the past and present seemed to converge in the soft glow of I was born into the world of Rome, a city that breathed ambition and blood in equal measure. The dust of the streets clung to my sandals, and the air tasted of smoke and unwashed bodies. My father, a man of standing but not the highest nobility, taught me the value of discipline early on. His hands were rough from the plow and the sword, yet they moved with precision when guiding my young hand to hold a stylus. The house was filled with the constant rustle of papyrus, scrolls, and the low murmur of tutors arguing over grammar. Education was the only path to power, a narrow bridge that spanned the chasm between obscurity and influence. I learned to read the works of Homer by the light of a flickering oil lamp, the Greek letters dancing in the warmth. The stories of Troy and the wanderings of Odysseus became my first maps of the human soul. I felt the grief of Achilles in my own chest and understood the weight of a hero's burden before I had ever drawn a sword. The satirical tradition of Lucilius later provided a model for my own critical examinations of the society around me. I watched the patricians walk through the forum with their heads held high, blind to the rot beneath their fine togas. Their laughter was sharp and brittle, echoing off the marble columns like the breaking of ice. The elegiac form allowed me to explore themes of love and loss with a personal intimacy that resonated with the quiet moments of my life. I wrote of a lover who walked through the rain, her hair dark against the gray sky, her voice soft as a whisper. These words were not for the public ear, but for the secret chamber where the heart beats alone. The uncertainty surrounding my specific training methods does not diminish the quality of the work I produced. The fragments that survive speak to a mind capable of profound observation and expressive power. I moved between genres with a flexibility that was rare among my contemporaries, shifting from the heavy weight of tragedy to the light touch of the epigram. My tragedies drew upon the historical myths of Rome, infusing them with the moral complexity of my own experiences. The technique of weaving political commentary into dramatic narrative required a mastery of language that I honed through years of silent study. The silence of the historical record regarding my early years allows the imagination to fill the gaps with scenes of quiet reflection. I can see myself sitting by the window, watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon sun. The room was small and cool, smelling of beeswax and old paper, a sanctuary from the clamor of the city outside. A large wooden table stood near the narrow opening, its surface worn smooth by the friction of countless reed pens. An inkwell of polished bronze sat at the edge, its dark liquid reflecting the sky above. The walls were painted with muted ochres and deep reds, the colors of earth and blood. A scroll of unfinished poetry lay unrolled, its edges frayed from frequent handling and the passage of time. The scent of lavender drifted in from the courtyard, mingling with the dry aroma of the parchment. Shadows lengthened across the floor as the sun moved slowly behind the distant hills, marking the passage of the hours. The stillness of the space invited deep thought and careful composition, free from the demands of the forum or the battlefield. My artistic development was shaped by the broader cultural currents of the late Roman Republic. The influence of Greek literature and philosophy permeated the education of every Roman nobleman of my station. I studied the works of the tragedians of Athens, adapting their forms to Roman themes and sensibilities. The satirical tradition of Lucilius provided a model for my own critical examinations of contemporary society. The elegiac form allowed me to explore themes of love and loss with a personal intimacy that resonated with my readers. My tragedies probably drew upon the historical myths of Rome, infusing them with the moral complexity of my own experiences. The technique of weaving political commentary into dramatic narrative required a mastery of language that I clearly possessed. The silence of the historical record regarding my early years allows the imagination to fill the gaps with scenes of quiet study and reflection. My life was a testament to the enduring power of art to endure beyond the turmoil of political upheaval. The words I wrote continue to echo through the centuries, a reminder of the human capacity for creativity amidst chaos. The story of my artistic development is one of resilience, adaptation, and a deep engagement with the world around me. It is a story that invites the listener to consider the quiet strength found in the written word. The legacy of my artistic contributions remains embedded in the cultural memory of the Roman world. Even without a complete biography, the impact of my poetry is evident in the respect I commanded from figures like Horace. The appreciation of my work continues to grow as scholars uncover new insights into the life of this complex figure. The silence of the past is broken by the enduring voice of my poetry, speaking across the ages. I was a man of letters as well as a man of action, balancing my public duties with my private intellectual pursuits. The combination of these qualities made me a formidable figure in the final years of the Roman Republic. My early life in Parma and my subsequent rise to prominence set the stage for the dramatic events that would follow. The path I walked was one of principle and conviction, leading me toward the fateful Ides of March. The foundation built during these formative years remained unshaken, even as the world around me began to crumble. I stood firm in my beliefs, drawing strength from the traditions of my ancestors and the lessons of my education. The story of my early life is one of preparation for the great challenges that lay ahead in the history of Rome. The Roman poet Horace thought well of my poetry, judging from a remark found in the epistles. This approval from a contemporary master indicated that I possessed a refined artistic sensibility recognized by my peers. No surviving text details the specific methods I employed to develop my unique style or technique. Scholars must therefore infer my artistic growth from the fragments of my work that remain available today. The silence in the historical record regarding my training leaves much to the imagination of the modern observer. Some accounts describe the writing methods of Cicero, but offer no information on my own artistic development. This absence of direct evidence suggests that my education followed a path common to the Roman elite of my era. I likely studied rhetoric and grammar under prominent teachers who shaped the intellectual landscape of the Republic. My role as a quaestor in 53 BC under Marcus Licinius Crassus marked a significant turn toward military and political affairs. This period of my life possessed a distinct and orderly atmosphere. Sunlight filtered through the high windows of the atrium, casting long, gentle shadows across the polished stone floor. A large wooden desk stood near the wall, its surface worn smooth by the hands of previous generations of students. On the desk lay several rolls of papyrus, their edges slightly frayed from frequent handling and careful reading. The air smelled faintly of cedar oil and dry parchment, a scent that clung to the walls and the heavy drapes. A bronze oil lamp sat unlit in the corner, waiting for the evening when the scholar would return from the wind moved through the olive groves of Syria, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant salt. Here, in the quiet before the storm of history, the silence was heavy with the weight of choices made long ago. I sat by the fire, watching the embers glow and fade, much like the hopes of a republic that once seemed eternal. The night was cool, and the stars above were indifferent to the struggles of men below. There was a stillness then, a profound calm that settled over the soul when the noise of the forum and the clash of steel had finally ceased. I remembered the taste of dust on my lips from the march, the cold steel of the gladius, and the warmth of a brother's hand. The shadows lengthened, stretching across the ground like the long reach of memory. It was in this quietude that the truth of my life became clear. Stripped of the anger and the ambition that once drove me, the fire crackled softly, a rhythmic sound that mirrored the beating of a heart that had seen too much and yet remained steady. The world turned, the seasons changed, but the essence of the man remained, etched in the stone of history, waiting for the light of understanding to reveal its true form. I looked back to those early days, when the Parthian campaign first tested my resolve. The air in the east was thick with the heat of the sun and the dust of 1,000 marching feet. I witnessed the disastrous defeat at Cara, a day when the sky turned red with blood and the earth drank deep of Roman life. The loss of Crassus and the destruction of his legions left a scar upon my spirit that never fully healed. I saw men I knew turn to ash in the desert wind, their dreams of glory dissolving into the sand. Cassius returned to Rome with lessons learned in the fire of chaos, lessons about the limits of power and the dangers of overconfidence. My conduct during that crisis earned me a reputation for courage, though it was a courage born of necessity rather than desire. The experience solidified my resolve to defend the Republic against what I perceived as threats to its liberty. I continued to advance through the political ranks with steady determination and careful planning, moving through the shadows of the state with a quiet purpose. The room where a young Roman scholar might have studied in the 1st century BC possessed a distinct and orderly atmosphere. Sunlight filtered through the high windows of the atrium, casting long, gentle shadows across the polished stone floor. A large wooden desk stood near the wall, its surface worn smooth by the hands of previous generations of students. On the desk lay scrolls of papyrus, their edges frayed from constant handling, and a small inkwell made of dark glass. A bronze lamp sat in the corner, its wick trimmed short to conserve oil for the coming night. The walls were lined with shelves carved from cedar, holding rows of wax tablets and bundles of dried herbs. The air smelled faintly of beeswax, and dried lavender hanging from the rafters, a scent that clung to the back of the throat. Outside, the night was still, and the only sound was the distant rustle of olive leaves in the garden. Dust motes danced slowly in the single beam of moonlight that pierced the high window, suspended in time like forgotten thoughts. Everything seemed suspended in that moment, waiting for the next decision to change the world. I was elected as tribune of the plebs in 49 BC, a position that gave me significant power to protect the rights of the common people. This office allowed me to influence legislation and challenge the authority of the Senate when I deemed it necessary. My tenure as tribune marked a turning point in my career as I became more deeply involved in the political struggles of the time. The political landscape of Rome was shifting rapidly as powerful individuals vied for control of the state. I navigated these turbulent waters with a clear sense of purpose and a commitment to Republican ideals. I aligned myself with those who sought to preserve the traditional balance of power within the Roman government. My early life laid the groundwork for the pivotal role I would play in the assassination of Julius Caesar. The formative years in Parma and my subsequent education shaped a man of intellect and principle. I carried the values of my ancestors into the heart of Roman political life with unwavering dedication. The quiet strength of my character became evident as I faced the challenges of my time. For 2 years following the Battle of Cara, I successfully repelled Parthian attacks on Syria. These prolonged campaigns tested my endurance and deepened my understanding of human suffering and political instability. The discipline required for military command often mirrored the precision needed for crafting complex poetic forms. I saved the remnants of the Roman army after their defeat, pulling them back from the brink of total annihilation. This harrowing experience undoubtedly influenced the themes of loss and resilience found in my later writings. The intricate web of relationships defined the political landscape of the late Roman Republic. The room where these men met was often quiet, filled with the soft light of oil lamps burning low. Marble columns stood tall and cool against the warm stone walls of the atrium. Shadows stretched long across the mosaic floor, depicting scenes of hunting and harvest. A bronze statue of a stern ancestor watched over the gathering with unblinking eyes. The air smelled faintly of beeswax and dried lavender hanging from the rafters. Outside, the night was still, and the only sound was the distant rustle of olive leaves. Scrolls lay open on wooden desks, their ink dry and settled into the papyrus fibers. The silence felt heavy yet peaceful, a pause before the storm of history broke loose. Cassius Longinus remained a figure of intense political rivalry and deep personal connection throughout his life. My relationships with Brutus and Servilia shaped my actions and my ultimate destiny. The alliance forged through marriage proved both a strength and a source of internal tension. I stood as a pillar of the opposition to tyranny until my final defeat. The legacy of my relationships endured long after my death in the annals of Roman history. Scholars continue to study the dynamics between these men to understand the fall of the Republic, the interplay of family loyalty and political ambition defined an era of great change. I died believing I had acted for the good of Rome and its traditions. My story remains a testament to the power of human connection in the face of overwhelming odds. The bonds I formed were as significant as the battles I fought or the laws I sought to uphold. History remembers me as a man who walked a path common to the Roman elite of my era. I likely studied rhetoric and grammar under prominent teachers who shaped the intellectual landscape of the Republic. My role as a quaestor in 53 BC under Marcus Licinius Crassus marked a significant turn toward military and political affairs. This period of service may have interrupted my literary activities, yet it also provided rich material for my satirical and tragic works. The lack of specific dates or locations for my birth adds to the mystery surrounding my formative years. I was a kinsman of Brutus and his friend, though not so simple and sincere in character. This description hints at a personality capable of the calculated artistry required for both poetry and political intrigue. The interplay between my public life and private creativity remains a subject of scholarly contemplation. My works, though largely lost, were once read and appreciated by the leading intellectuals of the 1st century BC. The enduring mention of my name in the works of Horace confirms my status as a significant literary figure of my time. The absence of many details allows the imagination to fill the gaps with the quiet dignity of a life well lived. It reminds us that behind every great political figure lies a human being with thoughts and dreams. The story of Gaius Cassius Longinus is a reminder of the fragility of life and the permanence of memory. My actions shape the course of history, even if my words have largely vanished. The legacy I left behind is a complex tapestry of violence and poetry, of war and peace. It is a legacy that continues to inspire and challenge those who seek to understand the ancient world. The study of my life offers valuable lessons for the present and future generations. The quiet study stands as a monument to the enduring power of the written word. It is a place where history is preserved and where the past speaks to the present. The light of the lamp finally faded, leaving the room in darkness. The night had passed, and a new day was beginning. The story of Gaius Cassius Longinus continues to unfold in the pages of history. The wind moves through the olive groves of Syria, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant salt. I remember the march across those dusty plains where the heat pressed down like a heavy wool blanket. My skin felt tight and cracked from the sun, a constant reminder of the long road ahead. We walked in silence, the only sound being the rhythmic crunch of sandals on gravel and the occasional lowing of pack animals. The sky above was a vast, unblinking blue that offered no shade and no mercy to those who traveled beneath it. It was there, in the shadow of the Taurus Mountains, that I first understood the sheer scale of the world we were trying to control. The army stretched out before me like a river of iron and leather, winding its way toward a destiny that felt both inevitable and terrifying. I watched the dust rise in thick clouds that swallowed the horizon, blurring the line between earth and sky. My throat was dry, and the water in my waterskin tasted warm and metallic. The soldiers around me were men of few words, their faces set in expressions of grim determination that I recognized well. We were all bound by a shared purpose, a desperate hope that our actions would shape the future of Rome. The political landscape of the late Republic was a tangled web of alliances and betrayals that shifted with every passing season. Men who once drank wine together at the same table would soon be drawing swords against one another in the dust of foreign fields. The room where these men met was often quiet, filled with the soft light of oil lamps burning low. Marble columns stood tall and cool against the warm stone walls of the atrium. Shadows stretched long across the mosaic floor, depicting scenes of hunting and harvest. A bronze statue of a stern ancestor watched over the gathering with unblinking eyes. The air smelled faintly of beeswax and dried lavender hanging from the rafters. Outside, the night was still, and the only sound was the distant rustle of olive leaves. Scrolls lay open on wooden desks, their ink dry and settled into the papyrus fibers. The silence felt heavy yet peaceful. A pause before the storm of history broke loose. Dust motes danced slowly in the single beam of moonlight that pierced the high window. Everything seemed suspended in time, waiting for the next decision to change the world. I stood in that quiet space, feeling the weight of the decisions that lay ahead. The death of Crassus at Carrhae had left a gaping hole in the political structure of Rome, a void that powerful men rushed to fill. I had served under him, learning the brutal lessons of command and the fragility of life on the battlefield. The Parthian arrows had fallen like rain, cutting down our ranks with a terrifying efficiency that no one had anticipated. That defeat shattered the illusion of Roman invincibility and exposed the vulnerability of our expanding empire. It was a moment that changed me, stripping away any naive belief in the permanence of our power. The loss of Crassus created a power vacuum that Julius Caesar moved to fill with his own ambition and military might. I watched as he returned from Gaul, a conqueror who had rewritten the map of Europe with blood and fire. His name was spoken with a mixture of awe and fear in the streets of Rome, a name that seemed to echo with the sound of marching legions. The Senate grew increasingly uneasy as Caesar accumulated unprecedented authority and disregarded the traditional norms of the Republic. He accepted the title of dictator for life, a move that felt like a death knell for the liberties we had fought to preserve. The political environment became increasingly hostile, filled with whispers of conspiracy and the clinking of wine glasses in rooms where plans were made in secret. I felt a growing sense of dread as the old ways of governance crumbled under the weight of one man's will. The conspiracy against Caesar was not merely a personal vendetta, but a calculated political maneuver to save the state from tyranny. We believed that the assassination of the dictator was the only path to restoring the old republican constitution of Rome. The interplay of family loyalty and political ambition defined an era of great change that would reshape the world. Cassius died believing he had acted for the good of Rome and its traditions, a conviction that never wavered even in the face of defeat. His story remains a testament to the power of human connection in the face of overwhelming odds and the relentless march of time. The bonds he formed were as significant as the battles he fought or the laws he sought to uphold in those final days. History remembers him not only as a killer of tyrants, but as a man bound by love and duty to a dying ideal. The quiet moments of alliance and the loud moments of conflict created a tapestry of Roman life that is still visible today. His life ended, but the relationships he forged echoed through the centuries that followed, shaping the way we think about power and freedom. The Roman Republic stood upon the precipice of profound transformation during the final decades of the first century before the Common Era. Political stability had eroded under the weight of ambitious generals, and the expanding reach of imperial conquests across the known world. I navigated a complex web of political alliances and familial bonds throughout my turbulent life, always trying to find solid ground. I initially commanded part of Pompey the Great's fleet during the civil war against Julius Caesar, a conflict that tore the city apart. After the decisive Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC, Caesar reconciled with me and appointed me as a legate, a temporary shift in my loyalties. This reconciliation marked a pause in the fighting, a brief moment of calm before the storm of my true opposition returned. I became a principal conspirator in the assassination of Julius Caesar alongside Marcus Brutus, driven by a shared vision of a free Rome. I was identified historically as the prime mover in this conspiracy to assassinate the dictator in 44 BC, a role I accepted with heavy resolve. The relationship between these two men was deepened by blood and shared political purpose, a bond that went beyond mere friendship. I was a kinsman and friend of Marcus Brutus, though our characters differed in their simplicity and our approach to the world. I was also the brother-in-law of Brutus, another leader of the conspiracy against Caesar, a tie that bound us together in fate. This familial tie was formalized when I married Junia Tertia, the half-sister of Marcus Junius Brutus, strengthening our alliance. The marriage between me and Junia Tertia was intended to strengthen the political alliance between the conspirators against Caesar, a union of hearts and minds. Through this union, I also became the son-in-law of Servilia, the mother of Brutus, a woman of great influence and sharp intellect. I followed the philosophical teachings of Epicurus, which emphasized the pursuit of pleasure through the absence of pain and fear. Scholars continue to debate whether these specific beliefs significantly influenced my political actions or remained a private intellectual pursuit. The coldness of temper suggested by my political transactions often contrasted with the warm affections I held for my family members. I married Junia Tertia, and this union produced a single son who was born around the year 60 or 59 before the Common Era. The specific terms of this marriage remain uncertain to modern historians due to the fragmentary nature of surviving ancient texts. No detailed information regarding my daily habits or personal struggles has been preserved in the available historical documents from that era. Some accounts attribute the more distressing aspects of the conspiracy against Julius Caesar to me, rather than to the idealistic Brutus. Even those who hated me on account of my conspiracy against the dictator could not deny the depth of my conviction. I stood as a pillar of the opposition to tyranny until my final defeat in the fields of Macedonia. The Battle of Philippi was the final battle in the Liberator's civil war between the forces of Mark Antony and Octavian. I fought alongside Brutus in this desperate struggle against the Second Triumvirate, knowing that our fate was sealed. Our shared fate was sealed in the fields of Macedonia where the Republic fell, a loss that echoed through the ages. The intricate web of relationships defined the political landscape of the late Roman Republic, a landscape I walked with care and caution. I remained a figure of intense political rivalry and deep personal connection throughout my life, a man of contradictions. My relationships with Brutus and Servilia shaped my actions and my ultimate destiny, guiding me toward the end. The air in Rome grew thick with the scent of unwashed bodies and unwashed ambition, a heavy fog that clung to the stone. Streets long before the Ides of March arrived. I walked through those crowded thoroughfares, feeling the press of shoulders and the murmur of a city holding its breath, waiting for a destiny that had already been written in the dust of distant battles. My path had led me far from the quiet study of grammar and rhetoric into the chaotic heart of military command, where the discipline of the legion mirrored the precision required for a tragic verse. The memory of Cara still lingers in my bones, a cold wind that never fully blew away, reminding me of the day the Parthian arrows turned the sky black, and the Roman lines dissolved into a river of blood and sand. I saved what remained of that broken army, gathering the scattered remnants under a sun that felt like a hammer, leading them through 2 years of relentless harassment that tested the very limits of human endurance. Those long campaigns in Syria taught me that resilience is not a grand gesture but a series of small, unyielding choices made in the face of overwhelming darkness. The political landscape shifted beneath my feet like shifting dunes, and I found myself drawn into a web of conspiracy that demanded a clarity of purpose I had honed in the heat of battle. The decision to move against Caesar was not born of a sudden flash of anger, but of a slow, calculated realization that the Republic was dying, choked by the weight of one man's growing shadow. I worked alongside Brutus, whose idealism burned with a pure, almost blinding light, while I provided the darker, more pragmatic edges necessary to carve out a new future from the old world. Our marriage alliance with Junia Tertia tied me to a family that straddled the divide between the Caesarians and the liberators, a complex knot of blood and loyalty that bound me tighter to the cause. The days leading up to the assassination were filled with a strange, suspended silence, as if the city itself knew that the world was about to break and change forever. I remember the weight of the Pugio, a military sidearm with a broad double-edged blade, resting against my hip, its cold steel a constant reminder of the violence that was to come. The weapon felt familiar in my hand, an extension of my own will, yet it carried a finality that no poetic metaphor could ever fully capture. We met in the quiet corners of the Senate House, exchanging glances that spoke volumes, without a single word being spoken, our minds aligned on a single terrible task. The plan was set in motion with a grim necessity, a dance of death that we had rehearsed in our minds 1,000 times before the moment finally arrived. The Ides of March dawned with a clarity that seemed almost cruel, the light filtering through the high windows of the portico, where the senators gathered to discuss the fate of the state. I moved through the crowd, my heart beating a steady, slow rhythm that betrayed nothing of the storm brewing within. The air smelled of old parchment and the metallic tang of fear, a scent that would forever be associated with that day. Caesar entered the hall, his face a mask of confidence that did not yet know the end was near, and we closed in, a circle of determined men ready to strike. The chaos that followed was a blur of motion and sound. The clash of steel against the marble floor, the shouts of the crowd, and the sudden, sickening thud of the first blow. I struck Caesar with a slanting blow across the face, the blade finding its mark with precision that felt both terrible and necessary. In the confusion of the melee, the chaos of a dozen daggers descending at once. I accidentally wounded Brutus in the hand, a moment of unintended violence that underscored the brutal reality of our actions. The blood on the floor was bright and shocking against the pale stone, a stark contrast to the gray shadows that now seemed to engulf the room. The act itself was performed with a sense of grim necessity by those who believed they saved the state, even as the weight of the deed began to settle heavily on our shoulders. We stood amidst the body of the man we had once called a friend, the silence returning to the hall, now that the deed was done, broken only by the ragged breathing of the conspirators. The political landscape shifted violently in the days that followed, as the city turned from shock to fear, and the forces of the Caesarians began to gather against us. I was declared an outlaw, a man without a home, forced to flee Rome and gather my forces in the eastern provinces where the old republic still held some sway. The journey was long and arduous, a march through lands that had seen the rise and fall of empires, each step taking me further from the life I had known. I joined the party of Brutus, and together we organized a resistance that would determine the future of the Roman world. A final stand against the tide of history that was turning inexorably toward empire. The Battle of Philippi approached, and we chose to entrench our forces in a defensive position between an impassable marsh and unscalable cliffs, a desperate gamble to hold the line against Mark Antony and Octavian. The marshland was a place of mist and decay, the water black and still, reflecting the gray sky above like a mirror of the gloom that had settled over our cause. We waited for the enemy, the silence of the camp heavy with the weight of what was to come, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and damp wool. The final chapter of my life unfolded in the shadow of that lost cause, a conclusion to a turbulent and significant political career that had begun with the hope of restoring a republic. The light of a single oil lamp flickered softly against the rough plaster walls of a quiet Roman study, casting long shadows that danced and stretched across the floor with the slow rhythm of the night. Dust motes drifted slowly in the warm, amber glow, suspended in the air like tiny stars caught in a moment of stillness. A scroll of papyrus lay unrolled on the simple wooden desk, its edges worn by the careful fingers of a scholar who had read it many times. The ink faded, but the words still clear. The air smelled faintly of cedar wood and dried ink, a scent that evoked the quiet industry of the past, a sanctuary from the chaotic storms that raged outside these walls. A bronze inkwell sat beside the scroll, its surface polished smooth by years of use, reflecting the soft light with a dull, metallic shine. Outside the small window, the night was still and deep, with only the distant sound of a night bird breaking the silence. a lonely call that echoed across the empty landscape. The room felt safe and enclosed, a place where thought could move freely without the fear of the sword or the dagger, a space where the weight of history could be examined in peace. Shadows stretched long and gentle across the floor, moving imperceptibly as the flame breathed with the slow rhythm of the night, a reminder of the passage of time. This space held the weight of thought and the quiet dignity of a life lived in contemplation of the world, a final resting place for the mind after the long journey of action. The stillness of the room offered a profound sense of peace, a calm that settled over the soul when the noise of the forum and the clash of steel had finally ceased. The history of that time is often told in terms of great men and their deeds, but the truth lies in the quiet moments between the battles, in the dust of the road and the silence of the study. The conspiracy of 44 BC was not merely a personal vendetta, but a calculated political maneuver to preserve a state that was already slipping through our fingers like sand. The assassination of the dictator was the only path we could see to restoring the old Republican Constitution, a desperate act that would define our legacy for centuries to come. Even those who hated us on account of the conspiracy attributed whatever was noble in the undertaking to Brutus, while laying the more distressing elements firmly at the feet of the calculating Cassius. The distinction between the idealist and the pragmatist is a thin line, often blurred by the chaos of history and the need to make sense of the senseless. I served as the prime mover in the assassination of Julius Caesar, driving the plot with strategic precision and resolve, knowing full well the cost that would be exacted. After the death of Caesar, I joined the party of Marcus Junius Brutus to continue our shared political cause, a struggle that would eventually lead to the fields of Philippi. The final defeat of our forces marked the end of an era and the beginning of the imperial age under Augustus, a new world that would rise from the ashes of the old. My life ended in the shadow of that. The silence that followed the Ides of March was not empty, but heavy with the scent of copper and wet wool. I remember the blood on my hands, warm and sticky, contrasting sharply with the cold stone floor of the Senate House. The chaos had settled into a strange, trembling quiet as the body of the dictator lay still. Some called me the architect of this darkness, the one who drove the knife with a calculated hand, while Brutus was seen as the noble dreamer. They placed the grim necessity of the act on my shoulders, though we both walked the same path toward that final moment. I felt the weight of the decision settle deep in my bones, a burden that would not lift until the end of my days. The streets of Rome were filled with whispers, the air thick with the fear of a city that had lost its master. I walked through the crowds with my head high, though my heart beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The political landscape shifted violently, turning friends into enemies and allies into outlaws in a single afternoon. I joined forces with Brutus, binding our fates together in a shared cause that felt both righteous and doomed. We fled the city, leaving behind the comfort of home for the uncertain safety of the eastern provinces. The journey was long, marked by the dust of the road and the constant fear of pursuit. We gathered armies, drilling men who had once served the very man we had killed. The training grounds echoed with the sound of marching feet and the clatter of armor, a reminder that peace was a fragile thing. I spent my days planning and my nights watching the horizon, waiting for the storm that I knew was coming. The years that followed were a blur of movement and strategy, a desperate attempt to hold back the tide of change. I commanded fleets against Caesar's hares, sailing the rough waters of the Mediterranean with a heavy heart. The Battle of Pharsalus had taught me the cost of civil war, and I sought to avoid its mistakes this time. Yet the shadow of the past was long, and the ghosts of the Senate House followed me wherever I went. The war was not just fought with swords and spears, but with the weight of history and the expectations of a dying republic. I found solace in the quiet moments, the times when the noise of battle faded and I could hear the wind in the sails. The sea was a constant companion, its endless motion a mirror to the turmoil within. I thought often of the poetry I had written in my youth, the verses that spoke of beauty and order, now lost in the chaos of war. The contrast between the man of letters and the man of arms was a tension I carried every day. I had saved the remnants of the army after the disaster at Kara, a feat that required more than just military skill. It demanded a resilience that stretched the limits of human endurance, a test of will against the vast desert sands. For 2 years, I held the line against the Parthians, defending Syria with a stubbornness that surprised even my enemies. The heat of the sun and the cold of the night were constant companions, shaping the texture of my thoughts. I learned that survival was a skill as complex as any poem, requiring precision and patience in equal measure. These campaigns deepened my understanding of loss, a theme that would echo in the final chapters of my life. The political alliances shifted like sand dunes, and I found myself married to Junia Tertia, linking me to a web of family ties that spanned the divide. She was the daughter of Servilia, a woman who had supported the very man I had killed, a connection that spoke of the tangled nature of Roman nobility. Marriage did not soften my resolve, but it added another layer of complexity to my already complicated existence. I moved between the worlds of the poet and the general, never fully at home in either. The conspiracy had been a calculated maneuver, a desperate gamble to restore the old constitution of Rome. It was not a personal vendetta, but a belief that the state required a violent correction to survive. The assassination was the only path we saw, a grim necessity that demanded the ultimate price. I remember the day of the Ides, of March with a clarity that never fades. The sharpness of the blade, the shock of the blow. I struck Caesar with a slanting blow across the face. My hand steady despite the turmoil in my mind. In the confusion of the melee, I accidentally wounded Brutus in the hand. A moment of chaos that underscored the tragedy of it all. The violence of that day overshadowed the military achievements that had come before, casting a long shadow over my legacy. I became the primary leader of the conspiracy, the one who drove the plot with a strategic precision that others admired or feared. The historical records would later attribute the more distressing aspects of the plot to me, while reserving the nobility for Brutus. I accepted this division, for it reflected the truth of our characters and the nature of our actions. The light of a single oil lamp flickered softly against the rough plaster walls of a quiet Roman study. Dust motes danced slowly in the warm, amber glow that illuminated a simple wooden desk. A scroll of papyrus lay unrolled, its edges worn by the careful fingers of a scholar who had read it many times. The air smelled faintly of cedar wood and dried ink, a scent that evoked the quiet industry of the past. Outside the small window, the night was still and deep, with only the distant sound of a night bird breaking the silence. A bronze inkwell sat beside the scroll, its surface polished smooth by years of use. The room felt safe and enclosed, a sanctuary from the chaotic political storms that raged outside these walls. Shadows stretched long and gentle across the floor, moving imperceptibly as the flame breathed, with the slow rhythm of the night. This space held the weight of thought and the quiet dignity of a life lived in contemplation of the world. The stillness of the room offered a profound sense of peace that I had not known in years, a moment to breathe before the final storm. The silence of the past is broken by the enduring voice of history, speaking across the ages of a man who tried to save a republic. My life ended in the shadow of a lost cause near Philippi in Macedonia, after the final defeat of my forces. The year was 42 before the Common Era, a date that marked the conclusion of a turbulent and significant political career. I joined Sextus Pompeius in Sicily to regroup and continue the struggle against the triumvirate, a final attempt to hold back the inevitable. I was present at the Battle of Actium in 31 before the Common Era, where Mark Antony was ultimately defeated, sealing the fate of the Republic. The light of the old world was fading, replaced by the dawn of an imperial age that would last for centuries. I had served as a prime mover in the assassination of Julius Caesar, driving the plot with strategic precision and resolve. The discipline required for military command often mirrored the precision needed for crafting complex poetic forms, a duality that defined my existence. I navigated the genres of satire and tragedy with a confidence that earned me respect in the literary circles of Rome, even as I wielded a sword. The lack of specific dates or locations for my birth adds to the mystery surrounding my formative years, a blank space in the story of my life. I was a kinsman of Brutus and his friend, though not so simple and sincere in character, a man of calculated artistry. The interplay between my public life and private creativity remains a subject of contemplation, a puzzle that history has yet to fully solve. My works, though largely lost, were once read and appreciated by the leading intellectuals of the 1st century BC, a testament to a talent that has faded with time. The enduring mention of my name in the works of Horace confirms my status as a significant literary figure of my time, a shadow in the Hall of Fame. The absence of grand public statues or architectural monuments that defined my era speaks to the nature of my legacy, which rested on the sharp edges of political action. I believed that the assassination of the dictator was the only path to restoring the old republican constitution of Rome, a belief that cost me everything. The conspiracy against Caesar was not merely a personal vendetta. The wind that once carried the scent of olive oil and dry earth now smells only of salt and fear. I stand on the cliffs of Philippi, watching the gray dawn break over a field that will soon be soaked in the blood of those I once called brothers. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and the metallic tang of iron, a scent that clings to the back of the throat like a bad memory. I remember the moment the decision was made, the cold calculation that replaced the warm fire of friendship. It was not a sudden rush of madness, but a slow, deliberate turning of the tide. We had walked together through the streets of Rome, speaking of liberty and the old laws, but the path we chose led only to this gray morning. The sun rises slowly, casting long shadows that seem to stretch out and grasp at our ankles. I look at the faces of my men, their eyes hollow with exhaustion and the knowledge that the end is near. The noise of the camp is a low hum, a mixture of whispered prayers and the clinking of armor. It is a sound I have heard 1,000 times before, yet today it feels different, heavier. The weight of the sword in my hand feels strange, as if the metal has grown cold and unyielding. I think of the words I spoke in the Senate, the sharp sting of my own voice echoing in the marble halls. They were words of conviction, but now they feel like stones thrown into a deep well, sinking without a sound. The conspiracy was a tapestry woven with threads of gold and blood, and I held the needle that pulled it tight. Brutus stood beside me, his face a mask of quiet sorrow. while I felt only the cold fire of necessity. We were bound by blood and by a shared purpose, yet our hearts beat to different rhythms. He sought the purity of the ideal, while I sought the reality of the action. The marriage that joined our families, the union with Junia Tertia, was meant to seal this bond. But even the strongest ties can snap under the weight of history. The silence of the morning is broken by the distant sound of trumpets, a signal that the enemy has moved. The Parthians had taught me that defeat is not a sudden event, but a long, slow erosion of hope. I had saved the remnants of the army after the disaster at Kara, enduring the heat and the thirst. But this time there is no retreat. The ground beneath my feet feels unstable, shifting like the sands of the desert I once crossed. I remember the taste of the water we shared, the rough texture of the bread we ate, and the warmth of the fire that kept us alive. Those memories are distant now, replaced by the cold reality of the coming battle. The sky is a pale gray, the color of ash and old snow. It is a day that feels like it has been waiting for centuries to arrive. The birds are silent, as if they know that the air is not meant for song today. I walk through the lines of my soldiers, feeling the vibration of their fear. Through the soles of my boots, they are young men, their faces smooth and unlined by the hard lessons of war. They look to me for guidance, but I have nothing left to give them but my own resolve. The sun climbs higher, burning away the mist, revealing the vast expanse of the battlefield. The enemy lines stretch out like a dark wall, unbroken and terrifying. I think of the poets I once read, the tragedies of Athens that spoke of fate and the inevitability of death. Their words were beautiful, but they could not prepare me for this moment. The silence of the past is broken by the roar of the cavalry, a sound that shakes the earth and stirs the dust from the ground. The horses neigh and rear, their eyes wide with panic. The air fills with the dust of thousands of hooves, a choking cloud that blurs the line between friend and foe. I draw my sword, the metal cold against my skin, and feel the weight of my own life pressing down on my shoulders. The battle begins not with a shout, but with a low murmur that rises into a scream. The clash of steel is deafening, a chaotic symphony of violence that drowns out all other thoughts. I fight with the precision of a man who has studied the art of war. But the chaos of the moment makes every move a gamble. The world narrows down to the space between my blade and the enemy, a narrow corridor of death. I see Brutus in the distance, his face pale and set, fighting with a desperate courage that belies his usual calm. The lines break and reform, a dance of death that has played out since the beginning of time. The smell of blood is overwhelming, a thick, coppery scent that coats the tongue. It is a smell that never leaves, a permanent stain on the soul of those who survive. The sun beats down, turning the battlefield into a furnace of heat and light. The sweat runs down my face, mixing with the dust and the blood. I am tired, so tired, but the fight must go on. The enemy presses closer. Their faces a blur of rage and fear. I swing my sword, feeling the resistance of the metal as it bites into flesh. The sound of the impact is dull thud that reverberates through my arm. The battle rages on, a storm of steel and flesh that seems to have no end. The ground is slick with blood, making every step a struggle. I stumble, catching myself on the hilt of my sword, and look up to see the sky turning dark. The clouds gather, heavy with rain, as if the heavens themselves are mourning the loss of so many lives. The rain begins to fall, a cold, relentless downpour that washes the blood from the ground, but not from the memory. The battle slows, the fighting becoming a series of desperate skirmishes in the mud. The enemy pushes forward, their numbers overwhelming. I see the end coming, a slow, inevitable slide into darkness. The sword in my hand feels heavy, as if it has grown roots in my grip. I think of the words I wrote, the poems and plays that spoke of love and loss, of the beauty of the human spirit. They seem so far away now, like a dream from another life. The rain falls harder, blurring the vision until the world is nothing but gray and red. I remember the quiet study in Rome, the smell of the papyrus and the soft light of the lamp. It was a place of peace, a sanctuary from the chaos of the world. But that world is gone now, replaced by this storm of violence and death. The enemy closes in, their faces grim and determined. I know what must be done, the final act of a life that has been defined by conflict. The sword is raised, not in anger, but in acceptance. The rain washes over the face, cold and cleansing. The world fades into darkness, and the silence returns, deeper and more profound than before. The story ends not with a bang, but with a whisper, a quiet acknowledgement of the fragility of all things. The rain continues to fall, washing the battlefield clean, leaving only the memory of what once was. The night is, the wind has long since stopped blowing through the olive groves, leaving behind a silence that feels like a held breath finally released. I watch the embers of my own life cool, turning from a bright, angry orange to a soft, enduring gray. The noise of the forum, the clash of steel, and the shouting of crowds have all faded into a distant hum, much like the sound of rain on a faraway roof. What remains is not the anger of the man who drew the blade, but the quiet peace of the legacy that outlived the bloodshed. My name was once a curse spoken in fear, a symbol of treachery that made mothers clutch their children in the night. Now it is whispered with a different tone, a name that belongs to the libraries and the quiet halls of museums where time moves slowly. The story of my death did not end with the fall of the Republic, for the seeds I planted in that chaotic soil grew into something far more enduring than the laws I tried to save. A bronze statue from the late Roman period stands in a quiet courtyard, its surface covered in a deep green patina that speaks of centuries of rain and sun. The figure holds a scroll with a solemn expression, the metal frozen in a moment of deep thought. Soft light falls across the carved face, highlighting the deep lines around the eyes and the firm set of the jaw. Dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight that pierce the high windows of the stone hall, moving with a slow, rhythmic grace. The air smells faintly of old parchment and dried lavender placed in a clay pot on the pedestal nearby. This object serves as a silent witness to the passage of time, standing still while empires rise and fall around it. The water from a small fountain trickles nearby, a gentle sound that has not changed since the day the statue was placed there. It is a reminder that while flesh turns to dust, the memory of a life can be cast in metal and stone. My wife, the woman who held my papers when the world turned against me, became the keeper of the flame that I could not keep burning. She gathered the scattered works of those who came before and the writings of those who followed, weaving them into a tapestry that would survive the fire of oblivion. The silence of the historical record regarding my early years allows the imagination to fill the gaps with scenes of quiet study and reflection. I see her now, sitting in a room filled with the smell of cedar oil and dry parchment, her hands moving carefully over the fragile pages. She understood that the true victory was not in the sword, but in the story that remained after the sword had rusted away. The cap of liberty became a powerful symbol associated with my name and that of Brutus after the death of Caesar, signifying the restoration of freedom for those who had been freed from tyranny. Ancient writers sometimes compared us to the mythical saviors of Rome, the divine twins Castor and Pollux, who represented protection and salvation in the eyes of the people during times of crisis. This association elevated the assassins to the status of guardians, a title that has outlasted the political factions that once tore the city apart. The legacy of my actions remained a subject of debate among historians and philosophers for centuries, shifting like the sand dunes in the desert. Future generations would look back on this period with a mixture of admiration and sorrow, seeing the tragedy of a republic that could not save itself. My story remains a testament to the complexities of political power and the high cost of ideological conviction. But it is also a story of the endurance of the human spirit, the values instilled in me during my youth guided my decisions throughout my adult life, and those same values continue to resonate in the minds of those who seek liberty. The literary works I produced during this period reflected my deep engagement with the cultural life of Rome, and they continue to be read and studied in quiet libraries around the world. I was a man of letters as well as a man of action, balancing my public duties with my private intellectual pursuits, a balance that has inspired many who came after. The silence of the past is broken by the enduring voice of my poetry, speaking across the ages to those who listen with an open heart. The uncertainty surrounding my specific training methods does not diminish the quality of the work I produced, for the fragments that survive speak to a mind capable of profound observation and expressive power. My ability to move between genres demonstrated a flexibility that was rare among my contemporaries, allowing me to explore themes of love and loss with a personal intimacy that still resonates. The story of my artistic development is one of resilience, adaptation, and a deep engagement with the world around me. A story that invites the listener to consider the quiet strength found in the written word. The legacy of my artistic contributions remains embedded in the cultural memory of the Roman world, even without a complete biography to guide us. Even without a complete biography, the impact of my poetry is evident in the respect I commanded from figures like Horace, who recognized the power of my words. A quiet library in Alexandria stands bathed in the soft, golden light of the late afternoon sun, a place where time seems to have stopped. Dust motes dance slowly in the beams that filter through the high, arched windows of the stone structure, creating a path of light on the floor. Parchment scrolls lie unrolled on wooden desks, their edges worn by the gentle touch of countless scholars over many years. The air smells faintly of dried papyrus, cedar oil, and the salt of the nearby Mediterranean Sea, a scent that brings the past into the present. A single oil lamp sits unlit upon a marble table, waiting for the coming twilight to illuminate the texts within. Outside, the gentle lapping of waves against the harbor walls provides a rhythmic and soothing backdrop to the silence inside. The room feels timeless, suspended in a moment of peaceful contemplation, away from the chaos of the political world. Shadows lengthen slowly across the mosaic floor as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, marking the end of another day. The stillness of the space invites deep thought.